I'm doing this video here today for the New Testament is Fake series, and I'm talking about the tree in the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the verse in the book of Matthew in the New Testament that Jesus talked about, the supposed Son of God, doesn't agree with what I find in the Old Testament, right? So we're going to look at this quickly, short video here. And, you can have your little, discussion about this with someone else in your Christian church, right? And just see what you guys come up with, right? Because there's clearly a problem here with this. For all those who believe in the New Testament and the so-called Savior, Son of God, Jesus is there, whether you're in a Christian church or an Israelite. Matthew chapter 7 verse 19. And it says here, no. That one is not what I'm looking for. That one says, every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. But, okay, wait. It might be Luke. For a good tree bringeth not forth corrupt fruit, neither doth a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. And that's from the King James. So let's read it from, and this is Jesus talking as well. Let's read it from another Bible. From the New Living Translation. A good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. Alright, so of course he's taking these ideas from real trees that were used, right? Because then the point's you're gonna get the point, whoever's listening to him. But what we find here is in the book of Genesis, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil has a tree that's bringing forth fruit that's mixed with bad and good. So if you're going to get good from it, then you're getting good from it. But if you're getting evil from it, you're going to get evil from it. And this just came to mind because of another video I'm working on with Cain. Right? And it just jumped out at me, something about the tree. So I thought I'd make this quick video here. But if he's saying as the Son of God, and Christians worship him as God, although they'll tell you no. But I just found another well-noted pastor last week in the news who is saying Jesus is God. See, they don't like to tell you that up front, the average Christian, right? But when they go to church to worship, they worship him as God, and they say he's God, right? But when you look at the real serious pastors and the real serious Christian authors, they'll actually let you know that he is God. But if you're questioning them, they don't usually want to tell you that, because then you're going to wonder, well, what about his father? Wouldn't his father be God? But normally they'll say, well, he never claimed to be God, but eventually they'll tell you that he is actually God. So they just need to get their story straight. But in Luke 6:43, Jesus is here saying the bad tree can't bring forth good fruit and good tree can't bring forth bad fruit. But in Genesis chapter 2, it says here in verse 17, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. Now, we know already that everything the Most High made, he said in the days of creation, he said it was good, right? I mean, we all agree with that. He said it was good. So, obviously, if this tree of the knowledge of good and evil was good that he made it. Although some want to say, yeah, he didn't actually make it. And that it was Satan who made it and placed it there and so on. But the Bible's telling me that God made the things that we see. Even the Christian from the New Testament will say Jesus, the Son, was the one used to create everything that we see. That the Father created him and then he made everything. So essentially they're saying God created everything. So even they themselves are telling you that this tree was made by God, or at least by his Son. right? So basically, I'm trying to say, it seems most people don't think that Satan actually made this tree. So if the Most High made this tree and said it was good, then that means that he made a tree that has good and evil built into it. And you can access that good and evil by the fruit of it, by the fruit from that tree, right? And that tree he called good. He said it was a good thing I made this today. So we see here, this is showing that Luke 6:43, with Jesus saying a bad tree doesn't bring forth good fruit, good tree doesn't bring forth bad fruit, is clearly working against Genesis chapter 2 verse 17, showing you that this Jesus again is lying on the scriptures, right? They're attributing these first 5 books of the Old Testament, or the Pentateuch as they call it, or the Torah, to Moses. So you're saying that Moses didn't have his head screwed on when he wrote these things? You see that? He's saying that the Most High said that there is a tree that's called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and it's got both good and evil mixed up, blended into it. Now, either there's going to be a problem with that kind of tree being there, and I can think of one problem, which, I mean, there's probably different problems that people have with it, because these trees, the tree of life, tree of knowledge of good and evil, seem so mysterious. And there's all kinds of thoughts there on these 2 trees in particular. But at least we see something here does not agree. I don't find people in the Old Testament, through the different prophets and the different ages and so on of the Old Testament times, having a problem with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But as soon as the New Testament comes around and this Jesus comes up, there seems to be a problem, because he says a good tree does not bring forth bad fruit. But if the Most High said it's good, then he's saying this stuff I made is good. So if the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is good, and it brought forth evil, that means it's bringing forth bad fruit. Because we know that once they ate the fruit, something bad happened. So the fruit that came from that good tree, that gave out good and evil, really, that tree gave out bad fruit, even though the Most High said that tree was good, that he made it. It was good that he made it. Right? And obviously he made it to have good and evil in it. Right? The Most High, he makes light and darkness and so on, right? Good and evil and so on, and he placed it in there for its particular function. Had they followed his instructions, then only good would have been experienced, right? If he allowed them to eat from it at a certain point, or however it was going to be used. But clearly, the statement from Luke 6:43 does not seem to add up here. Evil came out of that tree. They accessed the evil by eating from a tree that the Most High was glad to have made. He said it was good that I made these things every day when he did his creating, right? So it doesn't seem correct. So, I mean, just a thought there on this tree and what Jesus says in Luke 6:43 for us to think about. And as you look at these videos that myself and others are teaching about all these discrepancies and these disagreements with this Jesus and the other characters in the New Testament, and the different sayings and teachings in the Old Testament, it's showing up more and more that there is a real serious problem with the New Testament, with Jesus, and with those who are teaching in the New Testament. At some point, you're going to have to really think, how much longer will people continue to come up with one thing after another of what they find wrong with the New Testament and how it contradicts the Old Testament before I really say, look, something is clearly wrong with this New Testament. It really does contradict the Old Testament on way too many points. Good tree does not bring forth bad fruit. Then why is it that after they ate from the tree, something went wrong and a judgment was pronounced? And eventually they were kicked out of the garden. Alright, okay, so, I mean, yeah, just think about it for yourself, and I hope you find the truth about this New Testament being fake.